because I love movies. I loved movies when I got to this business at 22. I love movies as much as much as I did when I was 22, and I'm 72. 50 years, man. I still love movies.
Hey everybody, this is Mike, and you're watching the Reelblack podcast. And today I am super duper happy to have the guest that we have today with us. Mr. Sam Pollard is an award-winning filmmaker, known for editing, but also directing such great movies. The reason we're talking to him today is because on November 17th, a movie that so Mr. Pollard has executive produced called Bill Traylor, Chasing Ghosts, will have its Philadelphia premiere screening at the Keene Collection on Brandywine Street.
I think Bill Traylor is probably the greatest artist you've never heard of, but he's getting heard of more and more.
Traylor's an inspired visualist. That's the only way you arrive at work. It's that distinct, that esoteric, that visually elegant and refined.
Bill Traylor lived his life between two radically different worlds, rural and urban, old and new, black and white.
He is engaging with issues around class, how we behave and how we treat one another, sometimes good and sometimes not so good.
I see a very animated, agitated, violent, mystical realm.
Without further ado, Mr. Sam Pollard, how you doing, sir?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
I'm great. I'm loving that John Coltrane picture behind you.
And it's also Eric Dolphy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it seems like jazz is your vibe. Does that inform a lot of what you do?
Many years, man. Many years.
Okay. So let me settle down into the jazz vibe while we have this conversation. So Chasing Ghosts. I know you didn't direct it, but what attracted you to the project to put your name on it?
Jeffrey Wolf and Bill Traylor, and number 3, Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay. Well, you hit me. I know Jeffrey Wolf, but can you elaborate?
Well, Jeffrey Wolf and I are both editing colleagues and friends and editing and filmmakers. And I've known him for quite a while, and I respect his work, both as an editor and as a director. And he has a real, substantive understanding of the African-American art scene. And when he told me about this Bill Traylor project and showed me some of the work, he asked me to come on as executive producer. I had no reservations. I know that he would do a fabulous job, which he has done, and hopefully the audience will see that when they see the film. And then, I was not as familiar with Bill Traylor, but being an artist whose work spoke volumes about where he came from, it was very intriguing and engaging. And so that was the third reason. And the fact that he's from Montgomery, Alabama, which I spent a lot of time in Montgomery because my son went to Tuskegee. I shot a bunch of films there, Slavery by Another Name, and most recently Lowndes County and The Road to Black Power. And it's the South, and my roots are in the South, so that always kind of touches me right here.
Right. Well, I didn't know much about Bill Traylor at all, but fascinating. I guess he's considered an outsider artist.
Yeah, if you use that term, yeah, it's sort of like I would, if we had to use some jazz analogies, I would say that people would probably say he was sort of like who would I say? He would be like early Louis Armstrong, from the 1920s when he was playing with, King Oliver and Lil Armstrong and doing Louis Armstrong Hot 5 and Hot 7. Out of that vibe, it's raw, but it's provocative and engaging.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I related to the film well. I take outsider artists as somebody who's not famous yet.
Well, you can look at it that way. You can look at it,
Or maybe, is fame the game?
Huh?
Is fame the game?
I don't think fame is the game, but I think that an artist is someone who has a unique vision and perspective, and Bill Traylor definitely had that. So that's why I would compare him to Armstrong.
Okay.
You know, I could also compare him to Ornette or to Art Ensemble of Chicago. Those are outsiders.
Mm.
You know.
But yeah, let's continue with the jazz a little bit, because
Yeah, sure.
you know, I mean, well, I'll finish my thought. So, you know, for those who don't know me yet, I consider myself like the Satchel Paige of Black independent film. I've been around forever, but I haven't made it to the majors for one reason or the other. You know,
Well, Satchel made it to the majors, Mike. He made it to the majors.
I'm still. Hey, I got breath in my lungs.
So you're a young man. You can still
Yeah,
make it.
I'm coming there. I'm gonna get there. When I get there, I'm gonna throw a no-hitter.
That's right. Think of that, man. Satchel Paige was playing in the Negro Leagues for almost 15 years before he got called up by the Cleveland Indians in 1948.
Exactly.
You know, so sure, you got time.
So that's how I look at Bill Traylor. And it's an interesting film because there's just a few still images of him, and of course his artwork, you know.
But I think that Jeffrey, you know, what he did that's very creative was he added other stylistic and cinematic elements, the dancing, the tap dancing, the way it was used with the images from Traylor, you know, the way he shot the interviews, the people who were, you know, sort of telling us to the narrative was, you know, uniquely done. It was a special way to approach making a documentary about artists. And, you know, and you got to take your hat off to Jeffrey.
Definitely.
For you know, thinking outside the box.
Yes, and Jeffrey will be with us on November 17th at the Keene Collection. So
good.
And it's free, open to the public. So urge everybody to come down. If they can't, the movie is available on streaming and DVD. But you want to have that real experience of being in the movie theater. Come join us on November 17th.
Anybody who I know in Philadelphia, I'm going to definitely say they should come to that screening.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah.
Even the cinematographer who shot the film for Jeffrey, Henry Adebonojo, he just moved to Philly. So,
oh yeah, he's going to be at the screening too.
Yeah, great. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I just got the word.
Yeah.
So what are you working on now? I saw Lowndes County at Black Star. Congratulations.
Thank you. And speaking to your love for Satchel Paige,
okay, I'm
working on a documentary about the Negro Leagues.
Oh wow.
Yeah, man. So we got a section on Satchel and Josh Gibson and Effa Manley, who ran the Newark Eagles. We look at how, you know, the evolution of the Negro Leagues was created by the first Negro National League was created by Rube Foster in the 20s. We look at Pittsburgh Crawfords and the Hilldale, Graves and all that stuff. So yeah, man, that'll be coming out hopefully in the spring. Okay. Theatrically, man, 20 Magnolia films.
Okay, I love it. Well, that can maybe that connects to my next line of questioning, which is the state of Black independent film. It seems like, you know, I'm just overwhelmed, you know, since the pandemic, especially with the number of movies being made and released, and me being made aware of, to the point where I legitimately stopped telling people to go see Black movies because it's sort of, at one point it felt like if we didn't support every Black movie that came out, they'd stop making them. And now it seems like we've reached a tipping point where it's been commodified by the mainstream. I mean, what's your take on it? Is it easier or harder to get work made? What are the challenges still to this day?
I say this to you. I say in the documentary realm, you know, for people of color, you know, it's become in some ways a little easier to get films made. If you look at the number of films being made by African Americans, you know, Latinos, Native Americans, it's growing. It's definitely growing. I mean, you got Reggie Hudlin just came out of the film about Sidney Poitier. You know, you got this gentleman, the first time Native American filmmaker, made a film called Lakota Nation that just came out. You know, you got my son's I'm co-directing a film, My Son, about Old Dirty Bastard. You know, for A&E. You know, I mean, these filmmakers are working. Particularly in the documentary realm. In the feature realm, you know, I think really one of the most creative filmmakers whose work is really extraordinary, and is Terrence Nance.
Yes.
Terrence's work is extraordinary, and you know, he's made his mark, but I think, you know, there's still an opportunity for him to even have a bigger presence. You know, so, you know, and you still have Malcolm Lee made, you know, he's finishing a series now, I guess, on The Best Man.
The Best Man final chapters, yes.
Yeah, he's doing that. And, you know, the legendary, you know, Spike Lee is always in the mix making something, you know, documentary or feature, you know, and you got what's the film with Regina?
One Night in Miami?
No, Warrior King.
Oh, okay, The Woman King.
Woman King. That what's the name directed? Gina
Prince Bythewood, yeah.
Gina's you know, in the house. Ava's making films. You know, so you know, we're out there. I mean, the challenge always is, how do you get your work out there and not sell your soul? You know, that's always a challenge. To get the money, but not sell your soul. You end up making compromises, but then how far do you go?
Well,
That's
do tell.
that's the biggest challenge.
I mean, your work seems to be very uncompromising.
Yeah, you know, I try, but you know, I still have people I have to deal with. I mean, I was saying to someone the other day, there's a wonderful young woman named Ileana Henry, who took 5 years, man, to make an extraordinary documentary about Roy Hargrove. You know, that everybody should see. It's just, you know, it's her vision. She spent time with him traveling in Europe right before he passed away. You know, beautiful, beautiful film. And, you know, but it's hard, you know, it's hard. I mean, I was saying to another group of filmmakers the other day, African-American filmmakers, when you take people's money, you sign something that says you're going to have to pay attention to them. If you as an independent filmmaker, if you decide you want to make a film and you don't want any response, any critiques from anyone, then just know that you can get it done, but it'll take you forever. And I'll give you a great example, man. Another film I have premiering next October on American Masters is called The Drum Also Waltzes. It's my 30-year odyssey about Max Roach.
Wow.
You know, I started shooting that film in 1987, Mike. You know, and I just finished it 30 years later, almost 35 years later.
Well,
but no one told me how to do it. I have a co-director. We got along extremely well. We had to raise all the money ourselves. I never saw a dime. All the money went into the film, has gone into the film. But it's probably, and you know, I got a lot of work out there, but it's probably one of my heartfelt favorites, because it's about one of the greatest musicians with, you know, in any area of the world of music that ever existed. And that's Max Lemuel Roach.
Right. And a political figure.
That's exactly right. That's why he's a great man, not just as a musician, but as a human being who understood that his music was more than just, you know, playing bebop. You know?
Well, I think the last time we spoke, we probably talked about the Sammy Davis thing.
It got to be me, sure. Yeah, that's
I think you're on the radio.
2019, something like that. Yeah,
yeah, powerful work. I mean, now, what's the difference? Well, I mean, a lot of, I guess, like a lot of the work you can't really do until the artist or the subject is passed on.
Oh, that's not true. I'm doing a film now, co-directing a film about Charles Blow's book, The Devil You Know. You know that book?
I know Charles Blow.
He wrote a book called The Devil You Know, and his thesis in that book is that African Americans who migrated to the North from the South should, in the 21st century, move back South to gain more political and economic power, because there's so many majority Southern cities now in the South. And if you can have an impact like we had, as people had an impact in the Georgia Senate race last year, 2 years ago, you know, we can have an impact in other majority Southern cities like in Charlotte, North Carolina, or even Jackson, Mississippi. So we've been following them around, you know, to Atlanta, to Chicago, to North Carolina, to Jackson, to his hometown, Gibson, Louisiana, to see what if his thesis makes sense to other people in the community. So it's not just dead people I'm doing, brother.
Well, you staying busy. What's a typical day for you? I mean, I know you're teaching, you're doing
I retired.
films. Oh, you retired from NYU?
I retired, and I don't live in New York anymore, man. I moved.
Okay, I didn't know all these things. I'm just going by Wikipedia. You need to get somebody to update that.
Yeah, I moved in May. I left New York after being born and raised and moved to Baltimore, man. Only like an hour away from you.
Okay, that's why you mentioned Terrence, right? He's down there.
Yeah, Terrence is in Baltimore. Yeah.
Okay.
I moved to Baltimore.
I'm halfway between y'all.
Where
But
are
I
you?
need to make a trip down to see Terrence for sure.
You in Delaware? You Delaware?
Delaware, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what's a typical now that you're retired?
Typical day. Here's a typical day. I got up this morning, Mike. I went downstairs to my gym for a swim. And I took a swim from like 8 to 8:45, showered, got dressed, had a 9 o'clock Zoom call about the Negro Leagues rough cut. Got off that call, and then I had a 10:30 call with my lawyer about a project I'm trying to develop about Impulse Records. Remember Impulse Records?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then I got off that call at 10:30, 11. I had a call with my son Jason to talk about trying to finish up this ODB film. And then 12 o'clock, I had a call with some producers about a documentary I've been attached to direct about Dr. King when he went to India in 1959.
Wow.
You know?
Okay, that's I never knew that story.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And then I was on my computer trying to figure out a train ticket to come to New York next Wednesday for a couple of meetings. And then it was time for the call with you.
Okay.
That's my day.
Just zooming.
Zooming unless I'm on the road. Last week I was in California for 4 days doing research on a new film that I'm co-directing with another Philadelphia native, Amir Questlove, about Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, shout out to that brother. And I know he's doing the Sly Stone.
He's doing the Sly Stone.
Chumpy, so.
And then it was to get on this Zoom with you to talk about Jeffrey Wolf's film about, Bill Traylor.
Gotcha. So when did it change? I mean,
What changed?
well, having multiple projects at one time.
I've always done that, man.
Okay.
I've done that for over 20 years.
Just multitasking. You can't get
I came from an editing background. I used to work for an editor. He had a company, and we would have to multitask. So I'd be working on 2 or 3 films, editing, overlapping. So I got that into my head that I could multitask. And I've been, sometimes I get a little chaotic, but most times I'm pretty cool.
Well, I mean, does it fall down to a basic aesthetic then? I mean, like when you have to answer all these questions that people are asking you, I mean, is it always locked in, or do you gravitate to the solution?
No, I'm always thinking about how the film should be made when I'm involved in a project. Like the Negro Leagues film is, stylistically archival interviews, how to shoot the interviews. In this case, we shot some recreations at this Rickwood Stadium in Birmingham, Alabama, home of the Birmingham Barons. Remember the Birmingham Barons?
Okay.
The Charles Blow is more of a verite film where we're shooting with him on the road, meeting up with people, not many sit-down interviews. So every film, from my perspective, I have to consider a stylistic approach, how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I got all these films in my head that I've seen over the years that inform my style. I mean, the films I edited with Spike, or looking at something from Gordon Parks, or looking at some old film, Hollywood film, and how they shot it cinematically. Some of your foreign film from Asia or from Europe. All these things are in my head, man. And I watch a lot of stuff, man. I'm up till 1:30 in the morning watching stuff. After a day of doing this kind of stuff, have dinner with my wife. Then from like about 9 to 1, I'm watching everything.
Wow. Wow. Okay, I gotta step in my game. Wheaties, what is it? Swimming.
It's Mike, it's simply passion.
Okay.
I'm passionate about making movies and watching movies. I love movies. I just love them. I mean, I told a group of I was in Virginia over the weekend showing Lowndes County at the Virginia Film Festival, and someone asked me how am I able to multitask so much? And I said, because I love movies. I loved movies when I got to this business at 22. I love movies as much as much as I did when I was 22, and I'm 72. 50 years, man. I still love movies. I never tire of movies.
That's the quotable.
That's it. That's right.
Quotable. Now, I wish I could say the same. I feel like, how do I feel? I'm so happy for everybody that's successful in this realm, telling stories about Black people. But
that's what St. Clair Bourne said we had to do, man.
What's that?
Tell stories about Black people.
No, I think it's great, but I also, you talk about selling your soul, I see it's just so many people making it. I don't even want to generalize, but I just wonder sometimes if some of the younger people caught all the lessons, like how many people watching now know or remember St. Clair Bourne,
Not many.
Yeah. So that's a constant fear of mine, So when you were teaching students, I mean, was responsibility a factor for them, or just being great craftspeople? Like what?
No, I think when you're talking to young people, it's not so much about responsibility. It's about being great craftspeople.
Okay.
It's like all young people. Most of us don't understand our history when we're young. It takes a little seasoning and maturing to kind of get it. I mean,
that's true.
If you had reached out to me when I was 22 and asked me about Louis Armstrong, I would have did it. But as I got older, I understand how complicated life was for us as artists and for someone like Louis Armstrong. So I've come to appreciate him much more than I did when I was a young man. That comes with maturity. What did I know about being an African American editor and how important that was, or becoming an African American director? It took me 8 years before, when I met Saint, who kind of spun my head around and said, "Whoa, man, why are you here? What's your responsibility?" I hadn't thought about that, and I was 30 years old by then.
Wow. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It took. I don't remember what my wake up call. Well, being at NYU was my wake up call. Being in the thick of New York City.
Yeah.
In the late 80s, at the time that everything was sort of popping in hip hop. All that stuff that we talk about was being sampled and brought back around.
Right.
And there was a void. I don't know if people remember, there was a void of Black voices until Spike.
That's right.
Throughout the 80s. So it just felt like every movie was precious at that time.
Oh, yeah. You remember that New York Times article cover that had
They Gotta Have Us?
Had Ernest Dickerson, Matty Rich, John Singleton on the cover. There was a bunch of them, man.
Yeah, I keep it in my phone.
Yeah, like 91, 92, something like that, right?
Yeah, it's what's funny about that. I don't know if you watch films differently in this era of politically correctness, but when I share that image every once in a while on Instagram, they're like, they could have done a better job. Where are the women?
Oh, I know.
There are no Black women in the picture.
And sure.
There weren't any Black women at that moment that had made a feature film yet.
Well, when did Leslie Harris was just another girl in the IRT?
I think it was a couple years after that.
After that, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, but it's like, I just recently rewatched Deep Cover.
Yeah.
Bill Duke's film. And man, that film is good, boy. Is that a good film? Woo! Clarence Williams III, Jeff Goldblum, Lawrence Fishburne. Woo, man, what a good movie.
They had a lot to prove.
Yeah.
We had a lot to prove back then. So
good film.
So as we wind it down, I want to ask you about Spike and Malcolm X, because the anniversary's coming up.
Is it? Yeah, that's right. Was it 30 years?
I think it's 30 years this month. I think it's this month. There's a big screening at BAM, and then there's going to be the Criterion Collection is putting out on 4K. So,
Oh, nice, nice.
so I mean, and you worked on that, correct?
I quit. I quit that film, man.
What happened?
Yeah,
It's 30 years. Can we talk on? Can we share that story? Or
sure. I had done Mo Better Blues and Jungle Fever, and Spike was gearing up to do Malcolm, and he asked me to co-edit with Barry Brown. You know, Barry cuts all of Spike's other films.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, absolutely. I said, but I just got to let you know I'm doing a documentary for the American Experience about Tulsa in Greenwood. Um, the Tulsa Race Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I said I would be able to start the second half of Malcolm. Barry should cut the first half. I'll cut the second half because I'll be spending the first part of your production shooting my own film, and starting the editing. Someone else was going to edit. But as I started to do the research on Tulsa, the race riots in 1921, and telling the story about the Black community, I started to get very nervous that this is one of the few times where I thought I couldn't multitask. I couldn't produce and direct this documentary about Tulsa and concentrate on having to work on Malcolm X. So Spike had started shooting. I think I went to a couple of days of dailies. And I think after the third day or something like that, if I remember correctly, I went to Spike after the screening. I said, Spike, I'm going to have to quit, man. I just got too much on my plate. I'm trying to do this documentary, and now I got to think about editing this epic feature film. And Spike initially tried to talk me out of it, but he realized, I don't know. He came to the conclusion the next day I was correct. So I quit. And I assumed, Mike, that would be the end of the relationship between Mr. Lee and Mr. Pollard, But as you know, it didn't end. I mean, I came back, I guess, a year and a half, 2 years later, and I did Clockers and Girl 6 and Bamboozled and Four Little Girls. So, it's life, how life is. Spike saw something in me, I guess.
When you mention those things, I can just imagine the smell of the film coming fresh from the lab.
But it was...
You're doing video dailies?
Clockers is the last one.
Okay.
I cut on film.
Okay.
I did Four Little Girls on Avid, Girl 6 on Avid, Bamboozle on Avid. And then when I worked on Inside Man as an additional editor in 25th Hour, it was all Avid. Clock is the last one I cut on film.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any rules, any words of advice for those out there seeking to make it in this industry?
Yeah, here's my words of advice. If you're looking to make it in the film business or any business that you don't think you're going to have a 9-to-5 job, you got to be committed to it. Committed to it, eat, sleep, and love it. Mm-hmm. And for the first 25 years of my career, that's all I did. Eat, sleep, and love making movies. Loved it. I still love it, but then I was able to have a family. I got 4 children, 4 grandchildren. Mm-hmm. So I made it work, but hard work. This business is about hard work and dedication and commitment.
No, and you got to respect that because, everybody's working super hard to work on a film. It's super hard work for everybody. So
yeah,
you can't be the half stepper.
No, not when you're making movies.
Okay. So last thing, I'm just trying to get it to 30 minutes. Parallels between, like you're doing a movie about the Negro Leagues.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that there could be a film about Black independent filmmakers.
Absolutely.
Where it was a sort of a segregated route for a long time.
Sure.
Do you see any parallels, or if there are parallels, what are they in terms of?
Yeah, the major parallel that we as African American people always are challenged with is how much do we want to integrate and assimilate, and what does that really mean? Do we want to integrate, as Harry Belafonte once said, into a burning house? What's the value in that? And what does it mean to integrate in this society? We're both from an economic perspective, an artistic perspective. You know, questions we always have to ask ourselves.
Right. So do you think integration led to our disintegration?
I
In
think
some
that in some ways it did, in some ways it didn't.
Okay.
I mean, I think if you look at some of our legends, you know, if to take two examples here really quickly,
Sure.
Melvin Van Peebles,
Hmm.
Gordon Parks, right? Melvin was a true independent, right? A true independent filmmaker. The one studio film he made it his way, Watermelon Man. But all of his other work is truly independent. Going back to Sweetback, you know, he never really, I mean, Melvin didn't compromise.
Right.
He made the films, he created the music, he did the plays that he wanted to do his own way, you know, and he's left a major impact on those of us who've come after him. Then we look at Gordon, who became a very successful photographer for what, Life magazine, you know. You know, he could do realistic photography, he could do fashion photography. Then he became a documentary filmmaker. And then he got his big break in 1969 with The Learning Tree. Went on to do Shaft, one of the great films of the 70s, right? But he never was sort of completely independent like Melvin. You know, he worked within the system and he made it work for him. So there's those two roads. Now, if your next question to me, Mike, was, which road did you travel, Sam? I said, I'm probably more in the Gordon Parks world, but I've also been able to be independent, like doing my Max Roach film. So, you know, it's a dance, man. It's a dance.
I love it. I love it. So for those who want to follow you, where can they check you out? Are you on social or anything like that?
Facebook, you can find me on Facebook.
Okay. And
Yeah.
a deluge, an avalanche of movies still coming from Sam Pollard.
That's right.
I love it.
I got another good 4 or 5 years, Mike.
Huh? Don't put a time limit. Till infinity.
To infinity and beyond.
Huh? We want it out. We want a movie for every jazz album you've ever listened to.
Oh man, that's a lot of movies then. That'd be a lot of movies.
Okay, but the ODB sounds hot.
You know, my son, you know, I gotta say, and he just edited a documentary that's also playing now called Louis Armstrong Black and Blues.
Oh, Sasha Jenkins.
Jason edited that for Sasha.
I was going to ask you if you'd seen it yet because you talked about.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. Sure, I saw it. I had to see it. My son edited the film.
He got access to the vault.
Oh, I know, man. And you listen to, have you seen it?
No, I've heard clips from the vault. He recorded. What's interesting for those who don't know about this movie yet, Louis Armstrong, from the time they invented magnetic tape, he owned a tape recorder and he would record private conversations in his home. And all this was only available through the Louis Armstrong estate. But now this new movie incorporates a lot of that material, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And what's amazing is this is Louis Armstrong undressed, you know,
literally and figuratively.
That's exactly right. You know, it's like great to hear him, you know, speaking his mind.
I can't wait. Well, it sounds like a great season for a documentary this year. And you know, your name is always mentioned at the end of the year, the top of the year. There's always a mention of Sam Pollard. So I hope to see more of you, you know, with Lowndes County and next year with the other films. So
yeah, well, I'm trying to stay in the tradition of Mr. St. Clair Bourne, you know, and another man who was one of my mentors, Mr. George Bowers. You know,
just being prolific and true to yourself. So.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you.
I have a great screening with Bill Traylor, and say hello to Jeffrey and Henry for me.
Absolutely.
He took it upon himself to pick up a pencil and paintbrush and put down the story of his life in the way that he could in pictures.
I could place his work next to anyone, and he would still stand out. When I see Bill Traylor's work, I see this yearning for a place that's beyond here. It's a place that's not tangible.